Coming up on Regarding Men, ABC, alleged journalism and rape lies. Well, welcome to Regarding Men, a place where we hold men in high regard, and also where red pill isolation comes to die. Indeed, I got it right that time. My apologies for my last faux pas. Anyway, welcome, and I'm here with Paul Elam from paulelam.com and Janice Fiamengo from the wonderful Fiamengo Files, two of my favorite folks in the world. And I'm Tom Golden, and we're going to talk about a little bit about kind of a MeToo thing today. A MeToo thing from Australia, where a fellow named Craig McLachlan was accused of all sorts of shenanigans, MeToo sorts of shenanigans, and by George, he was acquitted for everything. But in the meantime, of course, Craig lost his job. He was an actor and a musician and a vocalist and whatever, and I'd never heard of the guy before, but apparently he was very popular in Australia, in TV, in musical theater, and also in all kinds of things. I mean, active theater, where he played Frank Furter in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Anybody remember the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Oh boy, do I. Anyway, it was during this performance, I think it was in 2014 when they had it. It was during his performance as Frank in Furter that he was accused by these ladies later on of all kinds of shenanigans. And, you know, here's a picture of Frank. Now, you got to remember, the Rocky Horror Picture Show is a pretty laid-back, crazy, zany sort of thing, as you can tell by his costume there. A lot of zany stuff going on stage, and probably a lot of zany stuff you can imagine going on backstage. Anybody who's been a part of a production knows that backstage a lot of crap goes on that's funny. People do silly things. Anyway, poor Craig was accused of all sorts of zany things, including, what was it? There was a scene in a TV show he did where he was standing next to a corpse. There he is, standing next to a corpse, and his line was supposed to be something like, "This is a beautiful woman," or something like that. And apparently he gave the line, and then he bent down and in her ear he said, only for her to hear, "You are a very beautiful woman." And that's the abuse? Okay. Well, but it gets worse than that. It gets worse than that, because he got accused of all sorts of crazy stuff. And we're going to go through some of that crazy stuff today. We're going to look at a clip that came out a while back. What was it? I guess the end of May, talking about his whole adventure. And because what happened was Craig McLachlan decided, wait a minute, I was acquitted. Now I'm going to tell my side of the story. And that's a part of what we're going to talk about today. So where do we go, guys? Should we start playing that clip?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's start and see where we go, and wherever you want me to stop, just say, "Stop, Tom." Oh, that's the wrong one.
Yeah, so while you're finding it,
Good.
we just say that this is a clip from Sky News Australia, which is essentially trying to do an expose on ABC News, which is the Australian public broadcaster, which in coordination with something called Fairfax Media, which now has a different name, I think it's called Nine,
Yeah.
they set out to do an elaborate smear job
Yes.
on this actor, Craig McLachlan.
Yes.
They, as is shown in the clip, they contacted women. They said, "Hey, do you have allegations against Craig McLachlan? We've got a team of lawyers here. We'll support you all the way through, and we'll even, as is made clear in this clip, I don't know how they got this footage from ABC and Fairfax Media. It's very, very damning. It clearly shows the journalists, the producers of the documentary, coaching the complainants and getting their stories just right and making what they have to say against Craig McLachlan powerful. And it's even made clear that their whole purpose in this is not to cover a story and to show all sides, but to destroy this man's life.
Yes, exactly. And they just as much say that.
Yeah, they say it.
They literally say that.
We want him out of his job.
So I found the clip. I found it. Should we go ahead?
Let's do it.
Yes, let's run the footage of honest feminists.
Well said, Janice.
Yeah.
Now, on this program in the past, we've exposed how the MeToo movement in Australia promised much but delivered little. Activist Tracy Spicer promised a tsunami of sexual assaults and predators would be exposed, but it didn't eventuate. Actor John Jarratt was one who was charged but acquitted.
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!
Another actor, Jeffrey Rush, won a defamation action against the Daily Telegraph. And yet another actor, Craig McLachlan, faced charges and was acquitted. McLachlan shared his experiences in a major documentary.
Yeah, so I don't know why. I mean, this is a wonderful clip, and in general, I quite like this presenter, and I like Sky News, but I'm not sure. Well, I just think this was a kind of sop to the coffee shop feminists in the audience or the general gynocentric audience by saying that the Me Too movement promised much and delivered little. I don't know what that means, except that it's partaking of the myth that there was something salutary about the Me Too movement, that there was a whole tsunami, as he said, of sexual predators needing to be exposed, that up until 2017 in the fall, women hadn't been able to come forward with their stories because they hadn't been believed, and therefore they were simply suffering in silence, and that this would have been a very good movement if it had, I don't know what, if it had achieved its alleged aims. I don't know why anybody, and I hear this over and over again, there were some things that were good about it. I remember Christina Hoff Sommers saying in interview with Tucker Carlson that it was about bringing the workplace up to the standards of the 21st century. As if there could ever be anything good about anonymous accusations without any due process, and men being fired from their jobs and disgraced and having their careers destroyed on women's say-so. So I think it's a very unfortunate opening for what is a very interesting and important clip.
Yes, I quite agree.
And I'd like to add to that too. I'm glad you brought up the CHS thing. Because again, this is something I've talked about for years, is that when you're assessing the value of people to a men's movement, however you want to shape that, one of the things that's important to understand is that there are people who are allegedly allies of men, but who in reality bring more gynocentrism, more chivalry, right into the mix, as though that's a pathway out. The Me Too movement wasn't, I think it actually did deliver on its real promise. Its real promise was to bring rape liars into the media limelight so that they could persecute at will anybody they wanted, and to have this giant media apparatus and as the woman said in the interviews, the legal teams that represent them into helping with the persecution. So Me Too movement, for what its real intended purposes were, has been delivered. It is a false allegation racket. And you even have people like Christina Hoff Sommers endorsing the fundamental proposition at hand here, which is to bring women's power, unequal power, unilateral power to destroy into the workplace, and it's worked quite well for that.
Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
exactly. I mean, it just, and this it's been there for decades anyway. This notion that women never talked about sexual harassment in the workplace, or women never told their stories of sexual assault. That has not been true for decades and decades. It has not been true at least since 1991, when a huge national conversation about sexual harassment erupted after the Clarence Thomas hearings, when Anita Hills told her ridiculous stories about being harassed by somebody saying, "Who put pubic hair on my Coke?" And that was 30 years ago. And at that time, we heard the same sorts of rhetoric about how women need to come forward to tell their stories, and women need to be believed, and action needs to be taken against men when women make allegations. And it did happen. Men lost their jobs, their lives were destroyed on the basis of unfounded allegations. So this has been going on for 30 years. Let's not pretend, at least 30 years, let's not pretend it's something new and that it had a good impetus. The other thing is, I think it's worth saying, he mentions these two other Australian actors, both of whom had horrific false allegations made against them that turned their lives upside down. The first one is a man named John Jarrett. I didn't know either of these people, but I looked into John Jarrett's. He was the one that was shouting freedom there at the beginning. He had a 40-year-old sexual assault allegation made against him. A woman that he had had sex with in 1976 came forward to claim that he had raped her. He was acquitted of that charge, but you can imagine what it was like for the year when he was waiting for his trial to take place, and everyone was believing that he was a rapist. The other one, of course, Geoffrey Rush, a very well-known Australian actor, well-known in Hollywood too, had a smear job in the Daily Telegraph against him, alleging that he had misbehaved himself during a stage production of King Lear. I think the headline was King Lear, spelled Leer. And he actually won a defamation case against the Telegraph because the allegations were completely false and had not been investigated, and there was no evidence to support what a particular actress claimed about him. So this is the fruit of Me Too. This is precisely what feminists planned and what they unleashed on the world. So why we're pretending that somehow, I don't know, it was a good movement, and it might have been good, but it went off the rails a little bit, or it hasn't achieved its aims, that's just a false story.
Indeed.
Maybe the most trivial charges and that's saying a lot. I mean, you can't, it's hard to make those kinds of contrasts.
Yes.
When you're talking about Me Too charges, but they were just extraordinarily trivial. To me, it is flabbergasting to think that even if every single one of the charges had been true, that a man should face trial over what he was alleged to have done, which included kissing a woman on her lips for about 1 second.
Oh, no.
Giving a full body hug, during which his penis allegedly pressed into the woman, and
against the woman.
Against, right, not into, but against the woman. That does count as sexual assault in the crazy world we live in. I've seen crown prosecutors in Canada making video statements advising the public that somebody touching your clothed body with his clothed body, or rubbing against your clothed body with his clothed body, can be considered sexual assault. So this is what we've come to, and this is what the Me Too movement has wrought. Another one of the allegations was that he had tickled a woman on her inner thigh.
Ooh.
He faced 14 counts of sexual assault and common assault and indecent assault from 4 women, and he was ultimately acquitted after a 3-year hell in which his entire life was turned upside down.
Indeed.
All based on, as we're going to see, a story concocted by ABC and Fairfax in conjunction with these accusers.
McLachlan shared his experiences in a major documentary aired on Channel 7 last weekend.
This is what I struggle with. I was public enemy number one.
He's been abandoned by everybody.
How am I going to survive this? I was admitted into a mental health facility. I contemplated the unthinkable. My family will be better off without me. They got everything they wanted.
The actor's trauma began with a trial by media when the ABC and Fairfax newspapers, now 9 Media, combined for a joint expose.
Okay, I want to hold it right there so we can talk a little bit about what we just saw, because that's the thing you do not see. You rarely ever see the pain of a false accusation on television. You just don't see it. And this guy is saying right up front, this wiped me out. I went into a mental health institution. I wondered whether my family wanted me around or whether it'd be better for them for me not to be here. That kind of depth of problem comes from this false accusation. It's just so important that people can see that and hear it, because, we just think, oh, well, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is devastating for people. And that's my 2 cents.
And they need to also know that what you just saw, that's the intended consequence for the MeToo, I don't even know what you call them, activists, but for the MeToo crowd, this is what they want. They want men utterly destroyed, utterly disempowered, completely wiped off the map, and then they can move on to the next victim. This is exactly what we're doing. It's what they want.
He deserves to be wiped out. That's their mentality. He
is a white male, Tom.
And they're justified in all the evil they're doing. This is evil as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
Okay, are we ready?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go.
And the weekend documentary aired some footage from their interviews that gave us a disturbing insight into the intent of that journalism and the coaching the journalists and producers gave to the women making allegations against McLachlan. In this clip, there is encouragement to use the word predatory.
Predatory.
Do that again.
Yep,
Was
okay.
predatory in there?
They knew exactly what they were doing, those journalists. They knew exactly what they were doing.
Are you happy with that, director?
Yeah, that's good.
It was absolutely brilliant. Awesome.
Now, this material was put to air by Channel 7, intercut with reactions from McLachlan in the here and now, listening to this stuff. Watch and listen here as one of the journalists questions the tactics, but the coaching goes on and they get what they want all the same.
Looking for a sharp, short. You said this is predatory behaviour. It wasn't a one-off. And when we all shared our stories, we realised how calculated it was.
I don't think we should be putting words into her mouth to
They
that
were the words
extent.
that I wrote down.
So essentially, what's of most concern is the power imbalance in this situation.
So I think what has inhibited our action previously and what's concerned us the most now is his... No, it's not that.
Hang on, guys, out there. We can hear them. Okay.
We're good?
Move on.
What is it that stops women from complaining in these circumstances, do you think?
I think in our case, it's their star power, it's their influence that makes us fearful, makes us feel as though our voices won't be heard. Short enough?
With that?
Too short? No.
Maybe even just something like, he's a big star. He has clout. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be listened to, or we would think we'd be listened to.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we hold
I
it
guess we
right
all
there?
felt that.
Man, I mean, what we're witnessing here is, what this red pill crowd has known all along about journalism.
Yes.
And about a lot of false accusations. What we're seeing, this can be played out in a conversation between a woman and her divorce attorney. It can be played out in schools and universities when people make accusations of sexual harassment or sexual assault. that turn out not to be true. This conversation is what you see going on behind the scenes all the time. I don't know how we managed to even get this footage out. I don't know if it was maybe the one woman in the crowd who apparently had a conscience about putting words in the interviewee's mouth.
Really?
Nobody else in that scene done. They were on her like vultures. And of course, she's not a victim in this. She's playing the game with them as a willing participant. So for those that say, well, she was under pressure. Yeah, I guess if you want to call concocting a rape lie under pressure, that she was.
Yep. She was a marionette. They were telling her what to say, pulling the strings.
And all of this was before the trial.
Right.
So how you could imagine that these women, having been coached and having told their stories to the camera with their words massaged and being told what kind of narrative to shape, could then go on and stand on the witness stand and have their stories be affirmed by the judge as honest testimony? The judge actually said in her ruling that she found the witnesses to be honest and brave, and she found no evidence. She found no evidence of collusion between the witnesses.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you take anything they said at face value when this process has gone on already? It's incredible.
Not only that, but the judge said the following: Belinda Wallington described McLachlan's evidence as contrived and his emotions as not seeming genuine. What? Crazy stuff, man. Absolutely crazy.
It's pretty genuine to me.
Boy. Yeah, let's let the judge get falsely accused and see what happens to her. We'll see how genuine she is. Should we go ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's see what we got.
His star power and his influence was more valuable and more important than us.
Perfect.
Perfect indeed.
Perfect.
This is a highly worrying look behind the scenes, isn't it? Are these journalists asking questions or dictating answers? The investigation had begun with journalists calling actresses involved in the Rocky Horror Show, a production that starred Craig McLachlan. And these journalists made promises from the start.
They began making calls.
We're contacting everyone who played this role.
And making promises.
You know, we've got a department of lawyers here at the ABC
and at Fairfax
that will back you all the way.
Yeah.
And then despite all that preparation and those early promises of legal support and weeks of filming and those, shall we say, interviews, let's call them interviews, McLachlan was only contacted at the last minute, given little time to respond before the story went to air. Yet weeks earlier, it seems the journalists' minds had been made up and the intent of the piece was made clear as they discussed the timing of when they would air the story.
The next one.
During their discussions, talk turned to the timing of when the story should run, prompting this curious comment from a senior Fairfax journalist.
The thing about the timing is that if we go Thursday, it just means that Friday is Friday. So we've got a couple of days then to do the follow-up because ultimately we want him out of that job.
Wow.
Well, they got their wish, didn't they? What a wonderful outcome for journalism, hey?
Oh boy. He lost his jobs totally, Yeah.
Which was the objective.
They're literally saying they got what they wanted. I mean, they're literally saying that's what they want. They want him out of his job. I mean, what does journalism come to now? It used to be journalism was telling both sides of a story. And no longer, it's a one-sided Mobius strip of lies.
And it's creating the news. I mean, this has been said by many people before us. It's not even a matter of taking a story and representing it and there always being some bias involved. Okay, we all know that.
Yes.
Now this is actually journalists setting out to create the story, contacting particular women, getting them on the set, telling them what they should say, with a particular objective of ruining a man's life in mind. I mean, it's you know, we've said for years that feminism has entirely captured journalism, and so this is just a very vivid confirmation of you know, what we've known for a long time, and it's pretty shocking.
Yes, it is shocking. Go ahead,
Janice. That this sort of behavior, these actions goes back 30, 40, 50 years, and it does, and it goes back even further. 2 words on that: Emmett Till.
Right.
And I'm thinking of, this was a 14, 15-year-old young black boy who was murdered for allegedly whistling at a white woman. And what you have to understand about these scenarios, the lynchings, all this stuff, part of it is race-based, but a lot of it, almost all of it, is really gynocentrism. It's this phony narrative of protecting women, in this case, protecting white women. But you don't have any more fairness for Emmett Till than you do in this situation. They're both situations where narratives are created and are not allowed to be challenged. And this is exactly what's happening to this guy. This why, despite the fact that he was found not guilty, he's ruined. No more work. He's not an actor anymore. He won't be. Nobody's going to touch this guy in the future. And I guess the only real difference between him and Emmett Till is that he's still breathing and Emmett Till is not, which is a pretty big difference. But his life has been utterly destroyed by a narrative that nobody's allowed to challenge. Kudos to Sky News for doing this story.
I was going to say the kudos to this reporter, you know, for doing it. It was a really well done piece.
It's an amazing expose.
Yeah.
The impact on McLachlan is really incalculable. He's told us there that they got everything that they set out to get. He felt destroyed, utterly destroyed as a human being. He felt his family would be better off without him. So now he's been acquitted. Perhaps he can rebuild his life. The feminists will tell us that this is very, very difficult for the accusers, for the survivors, but they are not the ones who will go through life shame. They are not the ones who will be denied, job opportunities, whose reputations have been destroyed. He is the one. He's already said that he contemplated killing himself.
Yeah.
I really hope that he won't continue to have suicidal thoughts, but he might well. And it's almost inconceivable how ridiculous it all is. I mean, he's talked in some of the interviews about the just the realities of life if you're doing a stage production, which you already referred to, Tom. These women gave as good as they got in the campy, fun-loving, body, sexually permissive free-for-all that was life in an acting troupe. He talks about being goosed, having comments made about the shape of his buttocks, having women say, "I love that ass." They touched him. A woman in her underwear sat in his lap and told him salacious stories about herself. I mean, this is the reality of what goes on, and yet only his actions, exaggerated and magnified in the witch hunting atmosphere of MeToo accusation, only his actions have to be answered for. And even in acquittal, we have a judge talking about what a terrible man he is. The judge essentially said that she was sorry to have to acquit him. Yes. She praised the witnesses. She said that, I think her exact words were, "I'm unable to exclude the possibility that an egotistical, self-entitled sense of humor led the accused to generally think that he had obtained consent." In other words, she's saying, okay, maybe we can't say for sure that he didn't believe his actions were consensual. But, and she does go on to say, if we were using objective standards that we now use having to do with consent, the outcome might have been different. But she's still saying whatever the legal, technical outcome, this man is guilty. He is an egotistical, self-entitled monster, and he deserves to have his life ruined.
Yep.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, the judge says the liars are brave and honest, and the victim is not seeming genuine.
Yeah.
How backwards is that crap?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then people wonder why men are now, there's a lot of trends going on with men. We have MGTOW, the MGTOW movement or phenomena, however you want to put it. We have men who are now refusing to mentor women in the workplace.
Yep.
We have men who are now more reluctant to hire women to begin with in the workplace. We even have men who are reluctant to administer CPR to a woman who's not breathing because they fear this kind of abuse from the system. And this judge in this case just reinforced exactly why men should be behaving this way, why it's the right thing to do, to ignore women in trouble. Don't try to help them. Don't try to rescue them. Don't mentor them. Don't be alone with them. We live in a crazy world, and it's horrible to even have to say this, because human development, for as long as we know, has depended on a cooperative relationship between men and women. And feminism has now undermined this to the point that wise and rational men don't have much to do with any women except maybe the one who they trust in life, but who won't really have anything to do with other women at all. And some men, like as you have with MGTOW monks, they're not having anything to do with women at all. They're just done.
Yeah.
And
Really,
this is why.
Yeah, it's really sad. And so it's ridiculous to pretend that Me Too has delivered little. This is exactly what it's delivered. It delivered #BelieveWomen. It delivered the idea of toxic masculinity and how all men are predators. It's delivered many, many men. We'll never know how many men, because of a false accusation or because of the feminist whisper network operating behind the scenes, how many men have not been hired, how many men were not rehired, how many men were dismissed from their jobs under a false accusation, how many men killed themselves. Indeed. I mean, the toll in terms of men's security, men's health, and indeed men's lives is just incalculable.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. The whole false accusation thing is just so powerful in a negative way towards men. It's just, people do not get it. They don't get it.
And it's because, as Janice said, those accusations have always been powerful. This whole mythology around women aren't believed. Oh my God. Crowds of people grab pitchforks and torches when women make accusations. Men have been murdered over false accusations. They've committed suicide over false accusations because there's this insane cultural rush to judgment anytime a woman says, I've been harmed, and can produce a teardrop to run down her face. There is going to be the preponderance of people are going to believe her, and many will want to act on her behalf, sometimes extra legally. And so the idea that women have struggled to be heard about these things ever is bullshit. It's total and complete bullshit.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And now it's even worse because of that false belief that women weren't believed in the past. So many people think, well, we need to right the balance. We need to believe them all now because they were never believed in the past. I mean, it's just,
when it's actually men who have never been believed, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need #BelieveTheMan.
Yeah. I like that, Paul. Yeah. Believe the man.
Maybe #Don'tBelieveTheRape-Liar.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a happy thought to end on. Are we finished?
Happy thought to end on. If you're tired of hearing these stories in this crazy world and that being all there is, come to Regarding Men, join the groups there. You'll talk to tons of red pill guys in an environment that is hard to even describe until you're actually there. These are some of the best group meetings I've ever been to in my life. It's really wonderful, and it is one click away, right there in the description area.
Really? I agree. Some of the best groups I've ever seen. And it's all spontaneous, and it's all, it's not leader driven. It's driven by the group. It's a thing of beauty, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, are we finished?
We are.
Janice was going to say.
I was going to say that men
are
good.
Oh, God. On that happy note.
On that one.
Oh, God. I didn't know what to do.
You guys have a good
All right, take care. Have a good one.
Great week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.